Thank you for listening to We Have Ways of Making You Talk. Sign up to our Patreon to receive bonus content, live streams, and our weekly newsletter with money off books and museum visits as well, plus early access to all live show tickets. That's patreon.com/wehaveways.
This episode is brought to you by AWS. Amazon Q Business is the generative AI assistant that can securely understand your business data, summarize results, and streamline tasks. Learn what Amazon Q Business can do for you at aws.com/learn more.
This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Upgrade your business with Shopify, home of the #1 checkout on the planet. Shop Pay boosts conversions up to 50%, meaning fewer carts going abandoned and more sales going cha-ching. So if you're into growing your business, get a commerce platform that's ready to sell wherever your customers are. Visit shopify.com to upgrade your selling today.
From your fryer to the table, it's a quick trip for crispy fries. But how about a crosstown delivery? McCain SureCrisp fries are designed to go from fryer to container to carrier to passenger seat across town during rush hour down a shortcut that wasn't all that short to a doorstep before they hit the table. And that first bite, the crispiness speaks for itself. To the last bite, McCain SureCrisp fries. Go the distance. See how far our fries can take your business at surecrisp.com/delivery.
Achtung, Achtung, merrily on high. Welcome to We Have Ways of Making You Talk, the Second World War podcast for all your Second World War podcast needs with me, Al Murray, and James Holland. James, you look wintry.
Yeah, no, I've got my seasonal. I'm clutching my Lemsip.
Oh, dear.
Yeah, you know, what can you do? It's inevitable, isn't it?
Yeah, it is inevitable.
It's been warm and damp, and now it's cold and damp.
And did you have any, you got any Storm Dara stories?
No, well, not really. I mean, the village was out of electricity for quite a long time. So Rachel and I yesterday morning going, should we fight everyone over, all those people who are still out of electricity, and give them a really big lunch? I was like, yeah, but I've got a book to write. So,
oh, dear.
But anyway, we did. And actually, it was very jolly. So we had Guy Walters was over with his son, Will.
Ah, great.
And various other people over. And we had now that we've got our garage, or I should say, air commas, gym.
Yes. Yes, of course. It's a gym, yes.
Why would a gym be allowed through planning permission, but not a sesh room?
I don't know. Get Angela Rayner on the phone. She's supposed to be tearing all that up, isn't she? Angela Rayner.
Anyway, so in our gym we had a big knees up. It was actually quite good fun.
Well, very good.
How about you? Did you no trees down?
Well, no. And we went to see friends yesterday it was his Monday, yesterday on Sunday. We were at the train and back all the way out to Wivenhoe, past Colchester and back, without a single hitch.
What? Sunday in December on a train after a storm?
Exactly.
How can this be? This is not the broken Britain that we know and love.
Exactly. And I was full of defeatist piss and vinegar. I'm going, I don't know why we're even bothering. Then we got there literally without a hitch, came back without a hitch. It's so really funny.
That is really funny.
Now, what we thought we'd do, as we've done occasionally in the last couple of years, is look at this week or this couple of weeks during 1944, during the Second World War. What is going on all over the world? And this is what's really good about the thing I always find that really illuminating about this is it is happening all over the world. These are the things.
Yes.
Remind yourself.
It's happening all over the world, but we're not going to go up to the 16th of December because we're going to save that little nugget for the new year.
Absolutely.
When coming to airwaves near you will be a super deeper series on the Battle of the Bulge.
On the Battle of the Bulge.
And, it's not something you can do by half.
But it is a busy week, isn't it?
There's lots of weird different stuff going on. It's kind of wind down, but it kind of isn't.
Yeah. Well, where do you want to start, Jim?
Well, I think the moving farewell parade of the Home Guard.
Yes. So that's the 3rd of December, which is a Sunday. That's the other thing lately, because we're writing Victory 45, is actually pinning dates to the days of the week. It's been, VE Day was a Tuesday. And I just think knowing it's a Tuesday sort of kind of changes the sort of, if it had fallen on a Saturday, would it have been different? But, you get a day off work, second day of the week, you're thinking bingo and V+1. Anyway, so yes, it's Sunday the 3rd of December. Is the moving farewell parade of the Home Guard, as you say. And that goes past the Royal Box in Hyde Park. And this is the end of the Home Guard. I think it's really interesting, isn't it? That, of course, they wound it down. Of course, they had to shut it down. Of course, they had to say goodbye to it. It's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah. They're just not needed anymore.
No. So what do those guys do with their weekends now? They got to go home.
Okay, and talk to the wife, haven't they?
Exactly.
Oh, hello, dear.
And what
Pass me a
happens
rock
now?
cake.
Do they give in their uniforms? I mean,
I don't know, Edge.
what's the process? I mean, surely they do.
I'd have also.
Maybe pinch your greatcoat. I mean, it's a fascinating moment, isn't it? Because it says you're winning.
It says you're winning. 3 mile long, the march past. That's suggestive that there's quite a lot of people involved in the Home Guard, which of course there were.
Yeah.
You know, and there's a picture of them here. Everyone will be pleased to know it's been raining.
Great.
So it's not just now that it rains a lot in December. It did in 1944. Terrible winter.
Stuff.
And yeah, I mean, you can see they're all in their greatcoats. They're all in their Tommy helmets. They've all got their Lee Enfields. There's no more Springfields on site.
No.
You know, they've got the kit. It's a big transformation, isn't it? From 1940, May 1940, really. I mean, I think that, you know, Home Guard is really impressive what they do.
Well, and there's an American squadron as well. That's the other thing.
What the heck?
Yeah.
Of US citizens.
First American squadron formed on the 1st of June 1940. It was formed in London. Average strength of 60 to 70, commanded by General Wade H. Hayes.
What a cool name.
I mean, that's just brilliant, isn't it?
How are you? The name's Wade. Wade H. Hayes.
It's just amazing.
That's fantastic. And Americans have such great names, don't they?
Yeah, they do.
We have John and Robert and Peter.
Yeah, exactly.
They have
better
Wade.
at it. Yeah, exactly. And of course, they have to have that middle initial. That's the other thing. They have to have a middle initial. That's that thing, the War Memorial on...
Yes, the Big Round Wonder Memorial. NMI.
Yeah, NMI, no middle initial.
Gets everyone every time.
It's incredible, isn't it?
Yeah, amazing.
I mean, so they're stood down on the 3rd of December and then finally actually disbanded on the 31st of December.
Yeah. In a broadcast tonight, King George said, "I believe it is the voluntary spirit which has always made the Home Guard so powerful a comradeship. You have found how men from all kinds of homes and occupations can work together in a great cause.
Great.
I am very proud of what the Home Guard has done, and I give my heartfelt thanks."
Oh, well, thanks.
God bless you, Your Majesty.
Well, thanks, Your Majesty. I mean, the Home Guards is interesting, though. The history is quite interesting because there is a moment where, you know, people on the left, they want to democratize it and run it like as a people's army and all this sort of thing in when it first starts up. They don't want it to be like proper, like army. They want it to be something new. They see it as an opportunity to sort of earth the Second World War through the population and create a sort of people's movement, which I think is really, really like a really interesting, you know, a million miles from Dad's army, obviously.
Yeah.
That actually there's sort of more to it politically than appears. It's not just you're giving people pikes to start with and then eventually rifles.
Yeah.
There's the politics swirling around it, people seeing what it means and what does it mean that you know, because after all, we've always been reluctant to levy militias, haven't we, since the Civil War? It's part of the national characters. That's why we don't have a standing army, because they're dangerous things to have in an island. And
yes,
when you have not got land wars to fight, and then suddenly you have a Home Guard. And like, what actually is it, and where does it fit into society, and what people are?
The truth of the matter is that we need to do a session, because I don't really understand how it works. I don't understand how, you know. I know you have these little units and stuff all over the place. You have the Wiltshire Home Guard, which is divided into lots of different battalions and platoons and things.
Yeah.
But how coordinated they are and who's coordinating them all, I'm not really sure.
Well, who runs it? Yeah.
And who runs it? Maybe a cheeky little two-parter at some point.
Well, there's that moment where Percy Hobart turns up in Oxford and starts organising things, which I think's really interesting.
With his pike,
you know, and obviously they go, "Oh, great, you know, someone who knows what he's doing."
Yeah.
But yes, so the Home Guard are stood down.
And you didn't do Home Guard all day, you know. You would do a couple of nights a week, 3 nights a week, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and Lord Lieutenants of the counties raising bands and all that. So it's all quite old-fashioned in that regard.
Yeah, it's like sort of, you know, creation of the Green Howards or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, Lovat Scouts.
And then obviously it gets sort of kind of coagulated, and Lord Lieutenants are told that they're going to have to coordinate with the proper army. You know, I mean, it is so interesting.
Well, let's do something on that.
But of course, they then end up in anti-aircraft defence and all that sort of stuff.
And of course, the auxiliary units spring from that, of course.
Yeah,
because a lot of them end up being the commandos. They're done with training. You're like, okay, well, we're not needed here anymore. I think that's what's going to happen to one of my characters in Alveston if I ever if I ever get the opportunity to write any more of it.
Elveston
Bird 2.
And the thing is, obviously, there will be a Home Guard expert right now shaking their fist at us.
Well, I did a lot of research for Elveston Part 1 in 1940. So I'm, in 41. So I'm up to speed on that bit.
Yeah.
And how they were formed in the first place. I'm pretty good on that. It's just what happened afterwards. It can't all be Wilmington on Sea, can it?
Well, in 1943, what's the point?
End of the day.
It's keeping people busy, it's keeping people organised, keeping tabs on people, I suppose, and all that sort of thing, keeping people involved in the war effort.
Well, you're still turning into a sort of social club. Well, it would be, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
It's like doing something every week.
Yeah.
Feeling you're doing something useful. But on the other hand, might it also be a bit morale sapping if you're just kind of doing the same old drills all day long every day?
Yeah, and yes, turning up in an air raid shelter full of rain or whatever. I mean, because that is, after all, that with the whole air raid warden thing, you end up with recruitment goes up and down, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Depending on how busy people are. People stop showing up if they think there's, the fluctuations in attendance are all to do with how busy people are, what's actually going on, the state of the threat as they see it, blah, 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 blah. As ever, you push into the Second World War, you find out there isn't a uniform single line of behaviour at all.
No.
So when people go, back in the war, we just put up with it. Well, actually,
lots of people didn't.
A lot of people didn't. They complained an awful lot.
Moaned the whole time.
moaned for the duration of absolutely every moment of it. Yeah,
country's gone to the dogs.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, exactly. Kids these days.
But what's really interesting with this is in sharp contrast.
Yes.
As the Home Guard is being disbanded, women in Germany are being compulsorily called up.
On the 5th of December, yes, the Germans, a call goes out for all German women over 18 to volunteer.
Yeah, that's a euphemism, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. You've all got to volunteer now, please.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Gertrude Schultz-Klink.
Well, she is one of the people who features in Richard Evans' new book about Hitler's people. The mother, Gertrude Schultz. So in 1971, she's someone who sort of gets discovered by the American historian Mary Ritter Beard, who finds her. She's Frau Klink, is described as, she rules the lives of women in all things. She tells them how many children they must have and when, what they shall wear, what they shall cook and how, what they shall say, laughing to their husbands and sons marching to war, how they should behave, smiling when their men are killed. Here is the responsibility for the home spirit, the core of national morale. And his chapter about her is absolutely fascinating because it's sort of about the room for maneuver she was given within the Nazi state is really, really, really very interesting. So she's the Reichsfrauenführerin, the Reich Women's Leader.
And she wrote a book called Die Frau im Dritten Reich, The Women in the Third Reich.
Yeah, exactly. It's all about Frauenschaft. I mean, this call going up in December, after all, the fact is actually German society was Adam Tooze argues that German society was war mobilised long before the war. And the sort of the Nazi pose that they hadn't done full mobilisation is again, it's a piece of propaganda that we've kind of fallen for along the way, because by 1944, you got 450,000 women in the anti-aircraft defence system, vast numbers of people.
That's a huge number, isn't it? Nearly 500,000.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
What's interesting about her, she has influence over the people below her, but she has no influence above. So they tell her what to do.
But she's only too happy to do it because she's an absolute rabid Nazi and remains so until she dies very sadly at the old age of 97 in 1999.
I mean, for God's sake!
I mean, I bet her book is really, really interesting because apparently it's just absolute unapologetically.
Well, so she's after the war in August 49. She goes on trial. She says it's a war between Europe and the East. So she's saying it's us versus Bolshevism. We're doing the right thing here. At her trial, still admire Hitler. And she says right up to the end, she believed that Germany would win the war. And then she says basically that the court, she persuades the court, but she's got no repentance, but she also says, I've got no influence. I had no influence over the decisions. It's men's business, the war, right? So they classify her as a Hauptschuldiger, which is a principal culprit with the highest level of involvement in Nazism. But then, right, she gets 18 months in prison, right?
Yeah.
And the court decide, well, she's already been in for that time anyway. She gets 2.5 years, right? And she successfully appeals because she's got 11 kids to look after from her multiple marriages. So they let her off. She goes to work for the Coca-Cola Corporation. It's absolutely unbelievable.
James, who's producing today, says, have we ever read Hitler's Furies? German Women in the Nazi Killing Fields by Wendy Lower.
No, I'll have to have a look at that.
Yeah. So it's not just about house fires, it's also about evil staff at Ravensbrück, etc.
Yeah, I mean, Schultz Klink, so Richard Evans' book, the Hitler's People.
I think he's coming to WWII Fest.
Yeah, great. What I found really interesting about their book is the stuff at the start is, it's Hitler, then it's Goering and Goebbels and Rome and all that. And you're sort of yeah. Reading that, I've covered this ground. But when you go into part 3 and 4 of the book, which is called The Enforcers and the Instruments, the stuff about Robert Ley is really, really interesting. We've talked a lot about Hans Frank on the podcast because of Nicholas Frank coming to, who came to WWII Fest a couple of years ago.
And Katrin Himmler.
But the stuff about Frank in Evans' book, and then when you get down into, and they're categorized. And I rather like this style where what you do is you chop things up into easily memorable categories, a bit like a village and a town and a bridge. But it's the general, the professional, the killers, the witch, the mother, the star, and the denunciator. And the chapter about Wilhelm Ritter von Lieb, who's sacked, stood down by Hitler, but nevertheless has an enormous estate. His soldiers were involved in atrocities and all that, and who after the war is basically able to sort of pass himself off as an apolitical soldier. Those chapters and the chapter about Ilse Koch, all that stuff. And then, like I said, Gertrude Schultz Klink is really, really fascinating because it's sort of these less high profile people who maybe you've heard of, but not actually looked into properly. And this chapter about Karl Brandt is absolutely, the diabolical.
Really?
The T4 stuff killed 400,000 people.
I know, it's just unbelievable, isn't it?
Absolutely mind-boggling. And this idea that because Germany had, their thinking is Germany's stock has been weakened by the First World War, so we need to balance it out.
And how these guys are still being kind of transported around the country.
Yeah.
Right up to the very end, as what can only be described as a priority, is just extraordinary. What's the point?
Well, it's 10 years ago now. I took Scarlett, my eldest daughter, and I took her for a history weekend to Berlin. We went to Topography of Terrors, which is by the Reichschancellor, which is an amazing museum and the whole point of it is it's the documents. It's the documentary evidence. So what you can't do is be one of those people who goes, well, they know that they didn't know, none of it's written down. It didn't happen. You can't do. They're refusing you to allow that. But they had a side exhibition, special exhibition about T4. And Scarlett has a mild disability, right? She won't mind me saying this now. She's a grown-up and she's done advocacy for it and also. She has a form of cerebral palsy, right? And we walked round there and she came out white as a sheet. And I said, "You're all right?" She says, "No, it's all a bit too bloody close to home, this.
Yeah.
They'd have killed me." And there was a bit in that exhibition, and it's some doctor in April 1945 in Vienna or somewhere in Salzburg injecting kids with, TB, bacillus or whatever to see what would happen.
What do you think's going to happen?
Well, what do you think's going to happen? The Soviets are over there, mate. Right? The Soviets are here. Why are you still doing this? And it's I think what also is really striking about this, and the chapter about Brandt is really, really striking. It is true that the Nazis, once the war starts, begin to accelerate the extermination. That's maybe the publicly unspoken heart of what they're trying to do, right? But they're very, very keen on killing people before the war begins. You can't be surprised that's what happens once these people have got the sort of Nacht and Nebel of war to hide under. You just can't be. And Brandt is into killing people. There's no other way of looking at it.
Yeah, he just loves it, doesn't he?
Extraordinary, truly extraordinary.
I mean, he does come to a grisly end, doesn't he?
Well, yes, this is what's great. He is one that does come to a grisly end.
Do you know what Brandt says while he's standing on the gallows? He says, "It is no shame to stand upon the scaffold. This is nothing but political revenge. I have served my fatherland as others before me."
God. I'll tell you what, we'll take a quick break.
On that cheery note.
While you all contemplate Brandt going to the gallows and yakking, we'll see you in a tick.
This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. The holidays mean more travel, more shopping, more time online, and more personal info in places that could expose you to identity theft. That's why LifeLock monitors millions of data points every second. If your identity is stolen, their US-based restoration specialist will fix it, guaranteed or your money back. Get more holiday fun and less holiday worry with LifeLock. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit LifeLock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
This is an ad from BetterHelp. This holiday season, do something for a special person in your life. You. Give yourself the gift of better mental health. BetterHelp Online Therapy connects you with a qualified therapist via phone, video, or live chat. It's convenient and affordable and can be done from the comfort of your own home. Having someone to talk to is truly a gift, especially during the holidays. Visit BetterHelp.com to learn more and save 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com.
Welcome back to We Have Ways of Making You Talk, where James and I are discussing the events of the, kind of second week of December 1944, and we've done the Home Guard has done its moving farewell parade. It won't actually be stood down until December the 31st, because you never know, do you? You never know what the Germans might do in December, Jim.
You never know. There might be some madcap, crazy offensive that they want to launch.
Just pull some stupid rabbit out of a hat.
The amount of stupidity is just constantly making terrible decisions, constantly shooting themselves in the foot, constantly not making the most of what they've got. I mean, thank goodness on one level, but I mean, it's so obscene. And then when you contrast that with the kind of sort of, the ideology and a moral certitude of someone like Harry Truman, when he's passed this terrible mantle of taking over from Roosevelt. Yeah. I mean, how can you not but stand in awe of this guy's, what he's doing, and everything he does, he's trying to do the right thing. Yeah. There's nothing about doing the right thing in the Nazi mind. No. It's about enacting some warped, grotesque fantasy world.
Well, and also, but they're in a state of sort of perma-revolution, so that they must all know at some point, and it sort of happens towards the end, they're all going to have to kill each other at some point. The logical conclusion is that everyone kills everyone, isn't it? Completely bonkers. In contrast, I've been reading Noël Coward's diaries, in which we serve that the wrangling around that in his diaries is absolutely amazing, right? Because basically, it's a propaganda film. No two ways about it. But because a ship is sunk in it, so this is Wednesday, the 17th of December, 1941. I know we're doing the week in 1944, but whatever. He says, Jack Paddington rang up from the Ministry of Information.
That's actually very good.
To say that they considered which we serve was bad propaganda for outside England, that the Ministry of Information could not in any way be associated with it, but that they would grant me certain facilities on condition that I was agreed that they should control all advanced publicity. When I asked why it was considered bad propaganda, he said it was because a ship was sunk in it, right? So because the ship sunk in it, they're like, So he says, I controlled myself during this conversation and agreed to meet them to discuss it tomorrow at 5. This I have no intention of doing. Absolutely appalled by this utterly infuriating impertinence. Right now, here's the thing: show business. It's not what Jim.
No.
We'll ask Dickie, Lord Mountbatten. We'll ask Dickie to take script direct to Winston.
That's just brilliant, isn't it?
Certain that there's a campaign still going on against me. Time will show. So basically, the following week, the Monday, the 22nd of December, 1941, he's doing auditions all day, screen tests. Then he telephones Mountbatten in the morning about the Ministry of Information. As usual, he was wise and clear and said that he would handle the whole affair. First of all, he wanted a script to take to the King and Queen, with whom he is dining tonight. He will then tackle Brendan Bracken. It's just like... So then he takes the script to Mountbatten at the War Cabinet and gets the film made.
That's amazing, isn't it?
Isn't it? Dickie's militant loyalty, moral courage, and infinite capacity for taking pains, however busy he is one of the marvels of this most unpleasant age. I would do anything in the world for him. So quite clearly, the Mountbatten magic worked on Noël Coward.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you're reading it's just the ones that have been edited by Sheridan Morley?
Yeah. It's really good. And, he's very interesting on Churchill because, he's making this film and then Singapore goes, but so he says, 10th of February says, Singapore obviously not a chance in a dreadful situation. Our troops retreating in Africa. Winston Churchill read production white paper before the Commons. I feel that he is losing his touch. He is fine when making stirring speeches, but on major issues, I doubt his judgment. His prophecies just before the war, when he was the voice of the wilderness, were wonderful, but he seems less good in judging strategy and men. Right?
What?
Yeah, but you know what, Jim? 1942, the first half of 1942.
Yeah, it was a bit of a shit show, wasn't it?
It's a shit show, and it's bad for Churchill. He knows the temper of the people in crisis, but I doubt if he really knows the people themselves. It may be heresy to say so, but I feel that if he goes on playing a lone hand, refusing to listen to younger and wiser men, he will fall, and this will be sad because it will damage his legend. Now, Noel Coward adores Churchill, and later on in the war, particularly, sees him just after the war ends, and sees him after he's lost the election, and he says, Churchill says to him, "It's very hard to take a bow for victory and then a trapdoor fall out underneath you," is how he puts it, right?
Wow. Oh, I've got to read these.
He's super connected. He knows it. I knows absolutely everyone. Can go anywhere as a result, right?
Lives in the Savoy, doesn't he?
Lives in the Savoy because he's been bombed out. Exactly, yeah. It's just really, really interesting. Meets the Morgenthau's and the president.
Yes.
Goes to Washington. And at one point, he discovers that he shouldn't have spent any money in Washington without the government's permission when he goes there to do propaganda stuff, right? And the government take him to court.
What?
And fine him for spending money abroad. And basically, the judge lets him off. Goes, "Nah, you're doing your job." Says, "What was Mr. Coward supposed to do? Go to the US with the £10 he has in the bank account and live off that?" It's an amazing story. But what's really, really interesting is this, because in 1942, there's that debate, no confidence debate in Churchill. Churchill is on really, really thin ice. And, that book I read earlier in the year, Blue Jerusalem by Kit Kowal, which is about the internal politics of the Conservative Party in the Second World War, is very interesting because, after all, they defenestrate Chamberlain for a lot less in 1940. They get rid of him for a lot less than what Churchill then endures. All of Chamberlain's policy fails and they get rid of him. And you could argue that by the third month of 1942, all of Churchill's policies have failed. You could argue that, couldn't you? That they're fighting the war at arm's length for Singapore.
Well, no, but I think you could also do an incredibly robust defence.
Yeah, but the point is the Tory party might, they never liked him.
Yeah.
So he does run the risk of being, anyway, I would thoroughly recommend the Noël Coward diaries, but just, the fact that he gets the king to greenlight his movie, it's kind of like, well,
Yeah, that's absolutely amazing, isn't it?
It's extraordinary. Right. What else have we got?
So Patton has crossed the Saar. It's always Patton. It's not Third Army. He's amazing, isn't he? He's the only one.
It's because he's good. He gives good copy. He's good with the hacks.
Yeah, no.
He's really brilliant at talking to journalists, which isn't to downplay the man's skill, but he's really good at talking to journalists, isn't he? That's the thing.
Yeah. The battle for the key industrial area of the Saar Basin is moving towards a climax as Patton's US Third Army exploits the 3 bridgeheads established across the Saar River. Advances of up to 9 miles, that's 14.4 kilometres, have been made. And in the central sector of the front, the Americans are within 5 miles of the capital, Saarbrücken. I mean, Patton does pretty well, really, doesn't he? I mean, I think he does deserve his reputation. I think he
does.
Particularly deserves his reputation as an operational commander. I mean, it's all tactics, and his tactical flair and his verve and all the rest of it. But actually his prep and his engineers and stuff are just brilliant, aren't they? So this is when Glenn Miller goes for Burton.
I know. On his way to Paris, isn't he? From Bedford. I went to school in Bedford. Bedford has John Bunyan and Glenn Miller. To be a pilgrim, we would sing at school. And then at the Corn Exchange, there's a plaque because that's where he did his last show before he flew. I mean, the thing is, it's December, isn't it? So, because he's one of these like mystery deaths of World War II, isn't he?
Yeah, I don't think there is much mystery about it, really. I think what happens is they're going across the channel and the artificial horizon doesn't work, and they just get discombobulated, and they misread the altimeter and they just go straight in.
Yeah. Instead
of at 2,000 feet, they're at 0 feet. It's just absolutely simple as that. There's no question about it at all, really.
Bad weather, poor daylight. It's the middle of December. I mean, what because there's one sort of theory, isn't it? That it's a bomber dropping bombs on its way home.
Yep.
And maybe someone saw something out of his canopy.
Yeah.
Maybe they dropped bombs on them. But I mean, flying is so bloody dangerous.
It just is dangerous. It is just absolutely dangerous. Yeah. There's also other stuff going on. So in Australia, the newly formed British Pacific Fleet has arrived at Sydney on the 10th.
And there's that whole thing, isn't there? The essential difference is that the British warships have a shorter range, don't they, than American ones? Because the Americans are geared to sailing across the Pacific, aren't they?
Yeah.
So there's a completely different sort of logistic culture difference between the Americans and the British, isn't there? And that's the sort of one hand behind the back aspect that the Royal Navy are fighting within the Pacific, right?
Yeah, exactly. So it just makes it a bit complicated. But they're there for all the they're supporting all the major operations that go on, and not least Okinawa, of course, where they're big time. Well, obviously that's to come in April 1945. April 1st, start of the Okinawa campaign.
Yeah.
Also, same day, Japanese troops form Operation Ichigo. Remember that?
Oh, Ichigo.
This is where they link up down to Indochina, Vietnam.
Yeah.
Completing their conquest of the East Coast.
Yes. I mean, what's the point?
Yeah, well, it's the same, isn't it, as bloody everything. I mean, just throw in the towel, mate.
Yeah.
In Burma, Allied engineers complete a 1,154-foot long Bailey Bridge.
Come on.
Come on, exactly. I mean, that's seriously long.
I mean, hurrah for the Corps of Engineers, Jim.
Yeah. Good point, Colonel. German forces withdraw across the Ruhr River.
The Ruhr.
The Ruhr.
Yeah, one of the Ruhr. It's one of the Ruhr. The Ruhr's the Ruhr, right?
Yeah. And this is the start of the kamikazes, isn't it? This is the kamikaze attacks on the US cruiser Nashville and destroy Harridan.
Yeah.
This is exactly when the kamikazes start kicking in December, isn't it? Off the Philippines, off Leyte.
Exactly. You've got Leyte, you've got Iwo Jima, American ships off Iwo Jima. You've got, I mean, all sorts going on. And then on the Eastern Front, the other Eastern, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, the Red Army gets to Lake Balaton in Hungary. So, what you really don't want to do if you're the Germans right now, when you're into this kind of nutcracker, right, is spunk your strategic reserve on some harebrained attempt to get to the MERS, isn't it?
You absolutely don't want that, and you don't want to be doing any more railway lines and logistics on just so you can execute people. I mean, it's just completely insane.
It's completely ridiculous.
It's completely insane. Interestingly, on the 14th of December, the Greater London Plan is published, advocating the creation of a green belt around the capital.
Wow.
And the transfer of 1 million people to 10 new towns. I tell you who we should get on at some point is Nicholas Boyce Smith. He's a really amazing guy, and he's into kind of modern town planning and trying to beautify ugly urban areas.
Yeah.
But he's absolutely a mine of information about all the kind of town planning post-war, and it's just fascinating.
Well, having grown up next to Milton Keynes and my mum being involved in sort of civic life in Milton Keynes, you know, watching that go from a thing on a map when I was a kid, turning itself into a sort of megapolis full of Amazon warehouses has been extraordinary.
Yeah.
Whole villages, you know, there's that weird thing where the villages are still in the middle of the city, but they're surrounded by city and not countryside anymore. It's very, very weird. No, that's interesting. And we're still, the politics of the Green Belt lingers. An idea from 80 years ago.
Yes, well, indeed. But also, I like the fact that it's a reminder, isn't it, that you know, at this point we've had the Beveridge report in December 1942, where people are looking ahead. And now they're really looking ahead, aren't they?
Yeah.
Winding down the Home Guard, thinking about future town planning.
Yes, but that's all. It's all very tricky, all that, isn't it? Because, I mean, the 16th of December is the V2 that hits the cinema in Antwerp that kills 567 people. So V2s are still quite capable of gigantic carnage. But this is an interesting phase, isn't it? When do you switch production from war production to post-war production? You know, not just yet.
Because no one knows when the war's going to end.
Yeah, it's really difficult.
You know, when Truman comes in, he's briefed that the war against Germany might still last 6 months.
Yeah.
And the war against Japan, 18.
Yeah. Even at the point where the US Army in Europe is saying no more replacements or isn't getting any more replacements because they're gearing to the east again, or they're gearing to the east properly. And so you've got that, you know, which is definitely part of the Berlin decision. It's like, well, we'd rather not get a load of guys killed going for Berlin if we could possibly avoid it, because we've still got to go to Tokyo. Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating because when do you say, all right, that factory that's churning out Liberators, we've got 20,000 now, we don't need any more or whatever. Yeah. We can turn that over to automobiles. When do we flick the switch to go back to a peacetime economy? And how do we do it? And where's the emphasis? And how do you stimulate consumer growth properly to pick up the slack? And they saw how badly wrong that all went after the First World War, how that was a complete mess, wasn't it? Post First World War. They're all trying to mitigate that sort of stuff and decide how do you rebuild, what do you do about Germany? And the Morgenthau Plan is a thing in people's minds, isn't it? To reduce it to an agrarian economy and all that sort of stuff. And you can see why that appeals to people too. Fascinating, isn't it? That moment. And how do you also, and the British state is worrying also about how it maintains power, how it maintains influence, knowing that the larder's bare, knowing that, you know, people are exhausted, no appetite for any further conflict. And also our relationship with empire has completely changed by late 1944. It's gone out the window, the idea that you're fighting for the British Empire.
Yeah, yeah.
What else is there? This is a fact. I mean, the thing is Greece. There's all the stuff in Greece.
Yeah. Well, let's finish on that one. Let's finish on Greece, because that is obviously absolutely fascinating. There's a terrible civil war which has sort of broken out in Greece between rival parts of...
You've got Elas, the KKE, AM, all these different factions, George Papandreou.
Yeah. Well, we did that series on Greece, didn't we, a couple of years ago, which was so interesting. But yeah, and the British decide, okay, well, we need to wade in and kind of come and sort this out. The worry is that it's going to fall under the communist yoke. That's the concern.
Yeah. And you've a proper British commitment, haven't you, in Greece at this point? I think 2nd Parachute Brigade are there.
Yes, and I think if I remember right, the 2nd Rifle Brigade, is it? And so the 46th Division, I think, gets sent over there.
Exactly, as you say, stop it tipping itself into Soviet influence is the thing, isn't it? That's what they're worried about.
Well, they're just worried it's all going to go commie,
Yeah, well, which is a daily worry in this household.
Got to stand up against it. All there is to it.
Right. Well, I think that there we go. There's what we've successfully done. We've hinted what's to come. That the Germans are about to make another. Because I think what's so interesting about the Ardennes is it's like a shiny bauble, isn't it? But it's hollow. It's got nothing in it, and it's so wildly
wind,
it's piss and wind, and it's so wildly ridiculous, profligate, rash, ill-judged in the set of circumstances you're in.
With no conceivable hope of succeeding.
Yeah. Think of what you'd be able to do if you put all those resources on the Rhine as a line of defence. How much better you'd do if slowing the Allies down is your aim. It's completely bonkers. Well, thanks everyone for listening. We hope you've enjoyed this week in 1944. I recommend the Richard Evans book. I recommend the Noël Coward diaries.
I recommend the Lawrence Rees book when it comes out.
Yeah, I can't wait to get my hands on that. And Kit Kowal's book, Blue Jerusalem, about the sort of internal Tory party politics is the thing is the most enormous rabbit hole in itself as a book. But the stuff about Churchill's position in 1942 is really, really interesting, where there is a no confidence debate and he does win it. But the stuff that gets said at that debate, from his point of view politically, is entirely blood curdling. It's really, really interesting. Anyway, it's all good stuff. Thanks everyone for listening. Don't forget, there's a festival in September, isn't there, Jim?
Yeah, there is. We have Waste Fest 5. Viva Victory, putting the fun back into FUMF.
The camp into Kampfgruppe, the 12th, the 14th of September. That still hasn't failed to get a laugh out of you. I'm very pleased with that one. So go to wehavewastefest.co.uk if you want to buy your tickets. I mean, they're going like hotcakes. Is the simple truth, and we'd love to see you there. I mean, if you've not been before, it's a whole weekend of basically this podcast brought into vivid life right in front of your eyes, but
with other historians and other performers.
And talks and tanks and conviviality.
Insane amounts of hardware. And the other listeners and the really great things, putting names to faces. And you're in a giant 2-3 fields of people who do not glaze over when you talk about the Second World War. No.
Where else do you want to be in mid-September next year?
Yeah, where people find their tribe there.
Yeah.
That's all you can say.
We hope you have a fantastic Christmas. Look forward to seeing you soon. Thanks very much for listening.
Tschüssi, tschüss.
Und tschüssi, tschüss.